Hello and welcome back. Another exciting day of math. We're going to be doing some more work with tangrams. Let me go ahead and pull up our lesson. Now, mine is going to look very similar, almost identical to yours. So the goal is to be able to help you do the problem set by showing you what it's going to look like. And it's going to be very similar to what yours is, almost identical. You'll notice up here mine says teacher, yours will say students. The questions that they'll ask will be a little bit different, but you should be able to manipulate the tangrams in the same way. Now, unfortunately, for a lot of us, myself included, it's way better to have these in person, the physical copies. And we made some with paper yesterday, so if you still have those, you can do it on that and then put your solution in on this Google Slides. But it's still not the same as those plastic hard copies of tangrams, even the paper ones. So I wish we had those to play around with. Unfortunately, we don't. Let's go ahead and take a look at the lesson. This is Module 7, Lesson 9. And I wish I could present this so that that's all you would see. But if I have it in presentation mode, I won't be able to move the shapes around. Our goal for this lesson is to reason about composing and decomposing polygons using tangrams. What that means is we're going to be making shapes out of tangrams. That's the composing, building the shapes. And that also helps us know how we can break apart shapes into smaller shapes. This is actually a technique that a lot of artists use. They'll look at something and they'll break it apart into basic shapes, and they'll use those shapes to guide their drawings. I know I used this technique when I was learning how to draw dragons. For example, you would start with like a triangle for the dragon's head, and then a circle where the neck meets, and so on and so forth. And so there are applications to composing and decomposing polygons, and that's just one of them. So the first question here is asking us to use at least 2 tangrams to make, and mine says, and draw each of the following shapes. Maybe yours says draw 2. Oh well. We're just going to be building these shapes using our tangrams. And my shapes are going to be a little bit different than yours, but the idea is the same, and I want to show you how to actually manipulate the shapes. So the first one here is a rectangle that does not have all equal sides. Basically, a rectangle that is not also a square. So we need to have some sides be longer than the other pair of parallel sides. And I have to use at least 2 pieces to do that. And so I can't just grab a piece and take it. Now, I think I'm going to start with my square and see if there's a way that I can manipulate it. Remember, if I hold the shift key, sometimes that helps when I'm rotating to make it line up nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. Put these against each other and grab one of these triangles. And I think, there we go. If you ignored the colors for just a second, in fact, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can make it so that we can ignore the colors. I'm going to make them all the same color, just a gray. Can you see how that is a rectangle and not all the sides are the same length? These 2 parallel sides are much shorter than these 2 parallel sides. So that's one way that I can make this shape. There might be more ways that I can do this, though. I haven't done a lot of exploring with it. But you can grab these shapes, you can move them around. I'm going to undo my changing colors. And you can just play around with the shapes. Remember, you don't want to change the size of the shape, so be careful. And if you accidentally do change the size of the shape, like let's say that I make this triangle smaller, well, now it's not the right size. If I just did it, I can hit Control Z and that'll do it. Or up here, there's an undo button I can click and it'll keep it that normal size. Because later on, if we change the size, it might mess things up. I wonder if there is a way that I can make another rectangle that does not have equal sides on it. If this is this way. This wouldn't be tall enough. I'm not sure I can do it. I'm not sure if there's another option. These ones aren't tall enough. Would it be tall enough with this one? With this one? Let's find out. This is what you're going to be doing for the assignment today. Is just manipulating these tangrams. Oh, look at that! It is. I think we found another way. I have to use some of the same pieces, so I can't make two of them. But look at that. We have another rectangle. I'll change the color of it again so that we can see it. We made another rectangle where not all the sides are the same length, and we did it in a different way than we did before with that square. So that's pretty exciting. Put those colors back. All right. The next one, it's asking us to make a triangle. Now we can't just grab a piece and say, boom, there's a triangle, because in the directions it says use at least 2 tangram pieces to make and draw a triangle. So if I used these 2 pieces, is this a triangle right here? Yeah, look at that. It might be a little bit off. I tried to get it as close as I could. But that's a triangle. Let me gray it out. I like to gray it out just because I think it makes it a little easier to see. Sometimes when you've got these multiple colors, it makes it hard to see it. Too dark of a, there we go. So yeah, look, it's a triangle. And if you look at the thumbnail of my slides over here, it looks like it's just a gray triangle. Now, interestingly enough, when I did that, I also made another triangle over here. Oh, that's not what I want. It's exciting though. Let's go ahead and gray this out. You see it? So it's another triangle. Now you might say, well, that's a lot of pieces, Mr. Sayre. Well, guess what? It says use at least 2 pieces, least. So I can use more than 2 pieces to make this shape. So that one works. I'm sure there's lots of other options, but let's go ahead and move on because we already have 2 examples right there. Let's get the color back on that one. Use at least 2 tangram pieces to make and draw the following shape, a parallelogram. Now we have to remember what a parallelogram is. It means that the opposite sides are parallel, and the opposite sides also have the same length. A rectangle technically is a parallelogram, and I already made a rectangle, but I'm going to challenge myself a little bit. I want to make some parallelograms that look a little different. There's lots of ways to do it. I'm going to start with this shape. I'll leave that there. And then if I take this shape, no, that's not a parallelogram. If I rotate it this way and stick it there, that's a parallelogram. This line is parallel to this one. This line is parallel to that one. Let's go ahead and change the shade on this one. So you can see it as a parallelogram. I think I can actually make another one fairly easily with just 2 shapes. Let me grab this and put it this way. Grab this triangle. Oh, not that way. This way. Oh, I keep grabbing the text. On yours, you shouldn't have a problem with that. I made it so that you shouldn't be able to move the text at all. So you won't have that same problem that I have. And look, there's another one. We want to change the shade color. Okay, so here's another parallelogram. I wish I could figure out a way to do it with this last piece so that I could use all my pieces, but I can't. So there's 2 examples of parallelograms. Now, here's the last one for me that I'm going to show you guys, and you're going to be doing some yourself. And so the goal is also to kind of talk about the shapes. So this last one, I'm making a trapezoid. And a trapezoid has one set of parallel lines. It has 4 sides. And there's a few ways that we can do this. Some of them, there's actually a lot. Some of them look, I don't know, I feel like they look a little bit nicer than others. So for example, when we were trying to make our parallelogram, I accidentally did this. And that's a trapezoid. This side is parallel to this side, but they don't have the same length. So the opposite sides are parallel but don't have the same length. And it has 4 sides total. And so that made, it keeps grabbing. That made a, wow, it's just a really fineness. That made a trapezoid. And if we color it in, so it might be a little easier to see there. I can even rotate it. That might make it a little bit easier too. You might be used to seeing them like this. Almost there. Like that. And that might be more familiar to you. They're both trapezoids. I just rotated it around. And that's one way that we can make a trapezoid. Now, another way we can do this, if I take this piece out, slide this piece over, and take this square, this is also going to be a trapezoid. And you see, if I change the shape of the square, they wouldn't fit together quite as nicely. And so that's kind of why I did it the way I did a different color. It's kind of the reason why I did it on this way. If I accidentally had changed the shape, let me show you. Now these pieces wouldn't fit together to make a trapezoid. So that's why I told you make sure you don't accidentally change the shape. I'm going to undo it so that they're all back to the right size. And I'm sure there's more options in here for trapezoids. Oh, let me show you one. Look, if I just take this out, is this a trapezoid? It is, because it still has a set of parallel lines that are different lengths, and it has 4 sides. And so this still is a trapezoid. That's pretty crazy. On your lesson, you're going to have very similar questions, and so I want you to just try it out and have some fun. When you create the shape itself, you can just leave it and the question's answered. You don't need to draw it. You don't need to write anything about it. You're just creating the shape. In this case, you're really just composing it. You do have a question where it's going to ask you to use all the tangram pieces to try to build a cat. And they might not match up perfectly because I didn't use my tangrams to make that image, but I did my best to make them the same size. And so some of them might be just a little bit off, but it'll mostly line up. It'll, I think, cover, except for maybe a few edges, and you'll be able to tell. So for example, the tail is the parallelogram piece, that blue parallelogram, the tail of the cat. And so that piece, it's really close, but I don't think it quite matches up. And that's what I'm talking about with it. But it's going to mostly line up, and it's going to use all of the pieces. And so if there's a big chunk that's showing, that's shaded, you know that that one's not quite right. But I want you to have some fun with it. That's going to be the decomposing, because you're taking a shape and breaking apart into smaller shapes. And these ones that we practiced together, we were taking and building shapes. So that's the composing part of our lesson. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions. And hopefully you have some fun with this. I know I always do. Like I said, I love math. I always think it's so much fun. So I'm excited. I miss you guys. I will see you soon. But until then, stay safe, have some fun.